Okay, so as I said, we can kind of bypass the whole step 9 business at the moment. And what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and talk about auditing itself, right? So the copy paste file is step 10 in my copy paste Audible, right? So you will have a copy of it there as well. Basically, what we're going to do is we're going to start off defining an interface. Okay, so I'm going to come down to models. One reason for having an interface is very quick in code to check and see if a class implements an interface. So I'm going to define my Audible interface. I'm going to make it an internal interface, actually, and it will have our 4 key audit properties for basic auditing, right? Strings for created by and updated by, and nullable date times for created on and updated on, okay? All right, now we'll need an actual class. So we'll add in the same models folder, I'll add my actual auditable class. Which will inherit from auditable. And if I wanted to, I could do this, right? But you know what? It's easier if I just put my own code in place. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. Okay, so I've just set some string lengths here, right, for the strings. And a scaffold column false, basically that means that if you had this in place before you went to scaffold and controller, you're just telling the system, hey, don't create an input, okay, on the screen for my created by string here, right? Because it's not something I'm going to be entering in an actual view. It's all going to be handled in the background anyway. Okay, so I have my interface defined, my Audible class ready to go. So really, all I have to do is come down in any of my actual models that I want to implement auditing on automatically. That's all I have to do, right? So I can come down here to my doctor class, for example, and I can inherit from Audible. Oh. And same thing for patient. Nope, don't need. Okay, by the way, just a little twist on C#. You can only inherit from one class, but you can implement as many interfaces as you want, right? So I can have my iValidatable object here, okay? And I can have other interfaces as well, but I can only inherit from a single class. Okay, now, we've made that change. So we have modified our patient and doctor classes, right? So I'm going to need a new migration. So this is a chance to actually practice here. I'm going to come down, delete my medical office migrations, get rid of the entire set of them if there are a bunch, okay? I'm going to delete the database. Oh, I don't have it at the moment because I just opened the project, right? That's okay. By the way, that's something I might have gone by quickly. Like this business of starting migrations over, you have to delete the database as well, right? Otherwise, if it sees the database there, when it creates your migration, it might be empty because it says, oh, well, there's nothing for me to do. You've already got all the good stuff there in the database, right? So that's why you have to make sure the database is gone in order to use our common commands here and re-add my initial migration. So I've got that. I'm going to come down to the console, package manager console, and we'll re-add our initial migration based on the current state of my model. Hopefully I build okay. All right. And just to have a quick look here. Yep. Now you can see in doctors, look at this, created by, created on, updated by, updated. So we've added all the fields, right? So I know that it's got my latest and greatest model design is all reflected, the whole thing inside this initializer. Good. Now, I'm not going to bother with the update database command because you know what? That's going to happen automatically because down here, I'm calling my code. Okay, if I want, I can even set this to true for now. Okay, we're going to use migrations and we're going to seed sample data, true, true, true. Okay, so I have the actual properties added to my classes. Now we're going to get to that funnel, right? What's the funnel that all the data goes through? Well, it's right up here in data. It's my medical office context, right? So all of my entities I'm concerned about for auditing are inside the medical office context. They're all here already. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add the code here. Now, the one tricky part about this is inside the context, I need to be able to, as I said, eventually I'm going to have to know who is logged in, who to give credit to for making these changes in the audit history, right? I don't want to say who to blame, who to give credit to. So what I'm going to need to do is have access somehow to the HTTP context, because it's through that context all the security and identity of who it is that's logged in is going to be available, right? So in order to have access to that, I need to add it to my dependency injection system, right? Now, we've seen before, that is all created here inside program.cs. Right at the top where we get this builder, okay, everything we're adding to services, our services is our dependency injection, right? So I'm going to add one line of code here so that I can inject anywhere I need it. Of course, right now I just need it in my DbContext, but I could, in theory, inject it anywhere I require it. My HTTP context, okay? Now, I just need to add a using. Oh, sorry, I grabbed the wrong line of code. That's what I get for trying to do so many things at once. Teach a class, record my video, and everything all at once. Okay, sorry. Builder.services. We're going to add it as a singleton. In other words, you can only ever have one, our HTTP context accessor. So now that that's there, I can come over to my actual context. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a second, okay, or alternative constructor, right? That's, polymorphism. Remember learning about that last year? Sure you do, okay? So I'm going to come down here and add a slightly different approach to our constructor. Okay, so I'm kind of replacing this one just to keep it clear. I still have it there, right? But here is my private read-only HTTP context accessor. I'm also going to create a public string here for username, right? Private set and get, okay? All right, so then here's my new super powerful constructor where I get my normal options plus my HTTP context accessor, okay? So grabbing that gives me access to the HTTP context. So what I can do is, first of all, check that it isn't null, okay? So we actually have a context to work with. If we don't, then I'm just going to assume that, hey, we're seeding data, right? Because that's the reason why I would actually be saving data without having the web application running, is I'm running my initializer and just seeding data, right? And that's actually, you're going to see that's useful, being able to see that in the audit information, the username is seed data. Well, I know then this is the data that I seeded in the initializer process, okay? Other than that, it will come in here, it'll check for HTTP context, user.identity.name. Yes, we will see even more about the security system later on, but user is the currently logged in user, their identity within the system, and then the name is their login name, right? So that'll give us a username. Now this is just to check if it's null, I'll replace it with unknown, right? And here's the original one without the additional HTTP context accessor. So I'm just setting my username to seed data here, right? Okay, so that's the change to the constructor. But still inside the DbContext, right here, we overrided on model creating. We often refer to this as the Fluent API, right, where we could make further and further refinements to the model itself. Well, we can also override SaveChanges, and that's exactly what we're going to do. So let me just get my code. Okay, now I'm overriding both the SaveChanges and SaveChanges async, right? And basically I'm calling the base SaveChanges and SaveChanges async exactly as it would have otherwise. But in the meantime, I'm saying, hang on, before you do everything you by default normally do when calling SaveChanges, I want to call my own little chunk of code here called on before saving. So this is where the magic happens, right? So I'm saying, hang on, before you finish saving, let me come in here and take control for a second. So on before saving, there's our change tracker. Remember we talked about as no tracking. If we add that to a link query, then there's no change tracker involved, right? But as long as we actually have the change tracker, I can come in here and get all the entries that is tracking, right? And then for each and every one, because I might be saving multiple changes across multiple entities, okay? So for each and every one, I'm going to examine it. I'll check, hey, is this particular entity audible, right? Ooh, okay. Then in that case, right, I want to come in here and do some changes, okay? So I grab a timestamp, okay? I'm going to grab it once so I can use it throughout this code. You don't want the fractions of a millisecond to play a role here, so I'll grab the time once. By the way, anyone remember what UTC stands for? Feel free to put up your hand or put it in the chat window. UTC now, instead of just .now. Okay, well, basically universal time code, right? So the time in Greenwich, England, or some such thing like that, I can't remember exactly. I think that's right, but anyway. The advantage of using UTC time is it's the same time all around the world. So if you have a user in Australia who's connected and working in your system, right, the clock will be the UTC the same there as it is here, et cetera, right? Okay. Then we have a simple switch on the entity state. So if it's modified, then we know we're doing an update, right? So I just set the updated on and updated by properties of my trackable object here to my now, okay, my UTC now time, and the username that we've determined we can use. So remember, that will be the actual username once we actually get the login system working. It'll be unknown, okay, if it's working through DbContext, or it might just be seed data, right? But in any case, it's updating the information with the best that we have. Now, of course, if it's added, so we've created a new record, then we also update the created on and created by, right, with the same information. And that's it. It's as simple as that, believe it or not. So let's go ahead and run it. It should create the database, seed our data, right, and away we go. So let me come in. I'll make a quick edit change. We'll change something or another, right? And then we'll actually just peek inside our data to see the audit history for now. Okay, so I'll come in here. I'm going to edit this record. And no, they're not in a medical trial. And we've changed the number of visits to 10. Save those changes. Okay, so I'll stop running. Let's come into our handy dandy little SQLite compact toolbox. And let me just connect here to our medical office. So I'll go into patients, right click. This is a quick and easy way to get the data up on the screen. Now we got lots of columns, right? But coming over here, look at, here's our audit information, right? So all created by seed data, okay? The date time, timestamp is there, right? Somewhere in here I should see updated by unknown. Oh, there it went by, there we go. So that's the one record that I changed, right? So we see here the timestamp is slightly different, okay? It's about 30 seconds or so, 25 seconds later than the time that all the records were initially created. So yes, I can see, of course, it was actually created by seed data, this record, but now Mr. Unknown, that's me, has now actually updated the record at this time, as you can see, about 25 seconds later after it was initially created. Okay, so that kind of proves the point that it's actually working. Now, of course, we'll make more use of it as time goes on, but it was important to actually get the auditing in place first of all. Any questions about the audit process? Okay.